One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of the business side of music. This week we have as special guest from across the pond, I should say, Damian Keyes, who is a social media strategist and a newly emerged influencer with fresh perspectives on using online tools for business growth. I think this is probably one of the most topical discussions we need to have these days, and we'll go into that a little bit more when we get Damian on the show here. Damian graduated from music college at the age of 19 and then joined the core team that grew the same college from 50 students to 800 before leaving at the age of 23 to set up the Brighton Institute of Modern Music. It's now the biggest independent provider for full-time music education in the world, valued at an excess of 60 million. I'm going to say pounds, or is that euros?
That's pounds.
Pounds, 60 million pounds. He's also the founder director of DK Music Management, which is the United Kingdom's largest commercial band management company, and Warby Entertainment, the largest commercial entertainment agency in the United Kingdom. Damian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. That was such a great intro. I'm going to send that to my mum. That's brilliant.
Yeah, tell her what you've been up to. So, glad to have you on the show. You know, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about, you grew this college that you went to from 50 students to 800. How did that feat happen?
That was quite weird. So I actually grew up in a different country. I grew up in Wales, next to England, in a city called Swansea. So my background was I failed all high school. My mum made me resit the entire year. And at that point, I failed a second time. So at that point, I decided education at that point wasn't for me. So I needed a backup plan. And my backup plan was I was a bass player and I wanted to be a rock star. So at which point I joined a band. The band started doing quite well. We got signed to a singles deal. So we signed, which meant they just literally put one single out. That did really well for the size. And then we got signed to a major label. So at that point, everyone was under the assumption that we would be the next biggest band in the whole world because we signed to a major label, not realizing that that wasn't the end, that was the beginning. And sort of about 6 to 9 months later, we put a record out which nobody bought apart from my mum. And at that point, we got dropped off the label. And so I was 19 years old, or maybe 18, 19 years old, and trying to think of what I was going to do for the rest of my life and wanting to be a bass player. So at that point, I just thought I need to meet people, I need to get out of this city, and I need to learn from people who've been there and done it. So I went to a music college which was just starting in South England, and I was very lucky because it was the very first year. And I met some amazingly inspirational people, and I realized very quickly that the thing I liked doing was working with musicians, was helping musicians with their playing, was helping it with their strategy side of things. So I was just one of those kind of right place, right time opportunities. And halfway through the year, as a student, one of the bass teachers was snowed in. It was really snowy. He couldn't get there. So I just said to the guy who owned the college, look, let me take the class for a couple of days until he comes back, and then we can just do business as usual. And then after a few days, they asked me to stay on as a bass teacher, and it kind of grew from there. But I think whilst it sounds very romantic that I was a bass teacher at the college at 19, I mean, we're talking 3 or 4 hours a week, and the other 50 hours a week was spent doing any job that they needed me to do. I was like the lowest of the low, the dog's body. You know, if there was tidying, if there was guitar restringing, if the toilet got blocked, at that point it was my job. I was doing all the kind of the dog's body work. And as with everything, I was very lucky, but at the same point I kind of worked my way up. So every time someone left, a new opening would happen, and I could work my way up into the management of the actual course, and the management of the college. And then after about 4.5, 5 years, myself and one of the other guys decided that we'd built this college, as you know, managed and built this college, but we didn't own any of it. So we wanted to actually be a part of growing our own college. So at that point, we decided to leave and set up our own university, which we thought would probably end up being about 300 students. That was our kind of target. And it's now got 6,500 students. So it's a lot bigger than we expected. It kind of grew.
How did you get those students?
I think
that many students.
The big thing was most people were joining a music course to learn to play, and too many people are always coming out the other side of a music course being able to play better and kind of understanding the technicalities of the industry, but not really knowing how they're going to fit into it. And I really related to that, being someone who was quite prepared to put all of the time and effort and work into my career, but didn't have any idea of what to do. So I needed to have that mentoring. And I think the reason why it grew is because we had time to sit with students on a one-to-one basis and talk about them personally and their goals. And I think that's what people need now. Everyone's different. Everyone's got different skill set, which lends itself to different distribution or different ways of working. And it's about finding the right strategy for you instead of having what was the traditional one-size-fits-all. And the traditional one-size-fits-all was you have to get discovered by a record label because they've got all the money, and you need the money because you have to make a record which is expensive. You have to distribute it. Back in the day when distribution was on CD, I mean, remember the time when you had to buy music to listen to it? Like nowadays, very, very different. But in order to buy music to listen to it, it had to be in every music shop. And so, you know, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually get your music distributed onto CD and then out into the world of music shops. So, you know, back then it was very difficult. Nowadays, you can do all that for free. You can record for free. You can distribute it for free. You can build the audience yourself. But what it does mean is you need to understand your skill set and how you're going to fit into building that audience and how you're going to fit into the music industry.
And understanding your skill set is just really the first piece, because there's so many moving parts, and we talk about this a lot on the show now, where, and you brought up something valid, distribution. We've talked about this many times. You know, used to have all of these national accounts that we would call on here in the States to get our music distributed that are no longer in business or are no longer carrying physical content. We're now dealing with electronic aggregators to speak of, whether that be Spotify or iTunes or Amazon, to get your music out there. And that's constantly evolving too. And that's one of the things I want to chat about in regards to social marketing. I just read, in fact, I think it was this morning, where Facebook is really going through some serious growing pains. Their stock dropped substantially. I think the number I heard was like $1.6 billion of devaluation. And that used to be the hot commodity where you promoted your artistry, you promoted your music, but now we're finding other platforms.
Yeah, the Facebook thing is amazing. I mean, when I started doing this social media development, where I was actually sort of the personal brand of me saying, I'm not just going to help musicians at college or in a coffee shop, I'm now going to take this online. And whilst there was YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and LinkedIn, Facebook for me was the one thing that was the easiest draw, because I could get on Facebook, it was all free, and at the same time I could boost things quite if I had a little bit of money. I could get it shared, and I could get it seen, and the more I got it seen, the more I got it shared. And then that was going great up until January, and I'm sure everyone's in the same boat. All of a sudden Facebook changed its algorithm hefty. I mean, it's always changing, but it really heftily changed its algorithm. And all of a sudden, everyone's reach and everyone's distribution just fell off the face of the earth. And whilst Facebook has got a plan for it, and it is now pay to play, the interesting thing is the consumption, because you and me are the consumers. Everyone listening is the consumer. And so if we say no, then Facebook has nothing. So we have to spend time on that platform, and every single social media platform is doing everything it can to get you to stay on there every minute of every day. YouTube wants you to not ever leave. As soon as you click off YouTube, it feels like it's done something wrong. It feels like it's been naughty. And so, we as the consumers, we get to judge. And so when we're all a bit frustrated, I think the thing that Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg's a smart dude. But I think the thing that's been a little bit overlooked when he's talking about us seeing less marketing, less advertising, and less business, I think the thing he's overlooked is we're all marketers. My next door neighbour, her daughter passes her driving test, and she puts a picture saying, "I'm really proud of my daughter for passing her driving test." She's a marketer. She wants all her friends to see that. So, it's not just people trying to sell guitars or trying to sell music. It's also my dad, who doesn't sell anything. He wants to get reach. He wants people to see the things that he's doing. And so, we are being algorithmed to death a little bit by Facebook. And, I think they are exactly what you said. They're going through growing problems. And it'll be interesting to see if they revert a little bit, or if we just conform to the way Facebook is going.
Or if maybe we move on to another social platform that's yet to be created. We don't know.
Yeah, and that's the really exciting thing. I mean, social media is such a new industry. I mean, if you remember MySpace, I loved MySpace. MySpace was my favorite. In fact, at the end of MySpace, I think it was just me and Tom. I think that was it.
I was on there too. So
it's just you, me, and Tom. And then Facebook happened, and it was kind of from that point that social media really started to develop fast. And it's only been the last 6 or 7 years that it's really skyrocketed. And so we are still used to having these new trends that come along. It's only now that we've got, over the last 6 to 12 months, that the monsters, which are Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, are looking like they're rooted, and every time something comes along, it either gets bought up by Facebook or it gets squashed by Facebook. But consumption is consumption. As soon as something comes along that we all buy into, whether it's Vine 2 or whether it's another piece of social media platform, at that point there'll be a reason for it. And it's exactly the same as when we're kids. When we're kids, we don't want to go to the same nightclub as our parents. We don't want to go to the same pub as our parents. And it's the same thing. Facebook, I remember when my mum and dad joined Facebook, I was horrified. And it's the same thing for the younger generation. Will be on Snapchat and Instagram, but eventually something will come along and it will be different. And it could well be just a lack of algorithm. I think, I don't know about you, but I think Vero came along for about 36 hours, and everyone wanted to jump on Vero because they thought that was going to be the next Facebook because there was no algorithm. It didn't take, but it does go to show that everyone's excited about new things, new places to hang out, new things to do with social media.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk with you a little bit about how artists can hope to grow their social media audience, because that's really such a big component these days. We talked a little bit about, you mentioned the record labels, and they of course have the deep pockets, have the money to promote and market, and it is two different things. But the artists now, a lot of that is in their wheelhouse, whether they know it or not, and they've got to do something with it. So when we come back, I want to touch base on that a little more. We're actually on the phone today over in England with Damian Keyes, who is with DK Music Management, which is the United Kingdom's largest commercial band management company, and Warbite Entertainment, the largest commercial entertainment agency in the United Kingdom. This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of the Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Vinny Ribas, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
This is Bob Bender. You're listening to this edition of the Business Side of Music. We're back in the studio with Damian Keyes, founder and director of DK Music Management. You know, we were talking a little bit about, Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat. The artist these days, and maybe it's not necessarily just the artist, maybe it's the songwriter, maybe it's the publisher, the little boutique operations out there. They have to take ownership of what they're doing now, because you don't have the big labels per se, although they're still introducing new artists, they're still getting them out there, they're breaking talent, but for the most part the independent artist has got to take control of their destiny. And a lot of that, I think, is creating daily online content on their social media, because why? They need to grow their audiences, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's two ways of looking at this. The first way is, this is such an incredible time. Yes, there's a lot of people doing it and there's a lot of noise, but we as artists are now 100% in control of what we want to do and how we want to do it, and getting our music out there. The other way to look at it is, it takes away from the art, because we want to create the best art and we want other people to get involved. So there's pros and cons of both, but I think right now there has never been a time where we can distribute ourselves, we can build our own audience, and I think that's the key. Is if you can build the audience, then you win. And so it's how you do that and how you actually make the marketing side of building your brand as a band or an artist, how you make that part of the art instead of thinking of it as a dirty word, because we're in a different time. And so what's amazing about this is social media, which is kind of where we're at with our consumption. My kid doesn't watch TV, but he's constantly on YouTube. We can find people through search engines all of the time. We can contact people. We can talk to people all over the world. We can build niches. We can do advertising very cheaply to niche markets. And so this idea of, if you build the audience, then you are completely in control. And so therefore it's how we build, but more importantly, how we look after our audience like we've never looked after them before. And I think that's the key, because you can now look after an audience on a one-to-one basis.
I think something you said too triggered a thought in my head too, is building that audience. You also not just want to build quantity, because this has been an issue that we've discussed in the past, where you see a lot of numbers and you're finding out down the road they're fabricated to a certain extent, that the large volume. But you also want to create quality. You want to have a quality fan base, a quality consumer base. And the reason I say that is because those are the people that A, are going to spend the time, they're going to become interested in what you have out there to share, and B, you're hoping that at the end of the day, they're the consumer. They're going to purchase the product, or they're going to stream the music, because that's really what it or they're going to buy tickets to go to the show, whether it's at a club or it's at a park or a theater or a large arena, because that's the end result of the day.
Yeah, and the key bit of this is how we do it, because I think that most people, especially artists, we're aware about social media. We're aware that we have to build an audience and look after the audience. We're aware we have to have certain numbers because that's where our audience is. The question is how we're going to do it. And I think the way we look at this is we look at the music industry in a slightly different way and why we do it. So, for example, I'm constantly seeing most bands pushing advertising. So on their Facebook, buy this, do this, go here, listen to this, buy our tickets, come to our gigs. They're just ordering people around and they're not bringing value. And so it comes down to how we want to monetize what we do as artists. Because up until very, very recently, we've always monetized the music. That was always what happened. So singles, albums, singles were a bit of a lost leader, but you'd basically sell the music. But if you think about where we're at now, music is free, but musicians and artists are still trying to sell the music. So what happens is they're saying to people, buy our single, buy our single, buy our single. And they say, okay, we will. Yeah, where is it? And you say it's on iTunes or Spotify. So you have a choice of buying it on iTunes or listening for it for free on Spotify. So it's a weird thing because people say, do you want it for free or do you want to pay for it? Then 99.9% of the population just say, I think I'll just have it for free if that's okay. And then we're saying, okay, that's cool, but can you buy it as well? Which you'd never do with a car. You never say, do you want a free car? By the way, do you want to buy this one on top of it? They'd say, not really, I'll just take the free one. So in which case, what we've got to do is we've got to use the music to build the audience and to look after the audience and value the audience. And then we've got to monetize in a different way. And once you've got the audience engaged and on that journey and following you and loving what you do because of the thing that you do, which is your music and your art, then you monetize it in other ways, like, for example, merchandise, ticket sales, subscription fees, and there's other ways, and brand deals. There's other things that you can do, which used to be very dirty ways of raising money. There was a bit of a sellout stigma attached to it, whereas nowadays it's more of a case of acceptable ways to make money whilst you're using the music to give it for free. Because the music's free, so we should recognize that and say, well, in which case, let's make music and give it away for free and then find another way to actually raise the money.
U2, years ago, I shouldn't say years ago, U2, some years ago, released an album on iTunes for free for everybody to have. And I think at that point, I was still in the record business. We all looked at that as a little bit of insanity. Why in the heck you spent all this money recording an album and you're giving it away? But that's really what we're all doing now.
It's crazy, isn't it? If you think about the music which literally changed your life, if you think about songs when you were a teenager that have sculpted and created a soundtrack to your life, these songs are priceless. I remember the first time I heard Enter Sandman by Metallica. I remember the first time I heard Chop Suey by System of a Down. The first time I heard Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms. These songs literally are the soundtrack to my life. I cannot put a price on how much they mean to me. How much am I going to pay for them? Nothing at all, because they're free. They're on Spotify, they're on YouTube, and so therefore we're in this weird time now where music is priceless and worthless at the same time. As harsh as that is, it's priceless to us and worthless in monetary value. So, we're at that point, and every day people will push back and say it's not fair, it's not right. And I think to myself, it's not right. People should actually value and pay for art. They should actually recognize that someone has put this time and effort into making something that we have consumed multiple times and taken to our hearts and we love. It should be worth something. Tough, it's not. So we have to get past that and say, look, you're right, it should be, but we can't live in a time where it should be because we're living in a time where it isn't. But what we can do is we can look at the people around us in YouTube land or other places who are making a lot of money because they've recognized that making videos is not the way to make money, but making videos is the way to build an audience, and then what you do with that audience, that's the key.
And of course, then that is the key component of trying to figure out what it is you do with that. And that really becomes that next step of where am I going to take my career? My wife and I yesterday met with an artist, had a wonderful conversation with her, kind of a out of the box, kind of a niche artist. You really couldn't put a finger on what her style of music was. And we got to talking with her in the meeting about what she was hoping to accomplish. She wants to shoot a little music video. And as we got discussing her career path, which was literally all over the map, and that was fine because that's what you have to do these days, it's discovering who you are. And I think in the midst of that conversations, you could see little lights going off in her head, and that you want to start thinking, you want to start provoking thought on really what that next step is, so you can put your foot there and start forward motion. And because at the end of the day, you are going to give music away. That I don't think is ever going to change. Yes, vinyl records are making a resurgence back into the consumer marketplace. I think CDs aren't entirely going away, especially in some pockets of the world where the internet signal, the providers aren't very strong. But it's all going to come down to, in my aspect, in my thought process, it's going to come down to that live performance. It's going to come down to that fan base and making them loyal followers of who you are and what you are. Your monetization, your money flow is going to come from those people, those fans, of purchasing different components of your career.
Yeah, and you said something really interesting there, which is about vinyl and CDs, because a lot of people still are selling music via vinyl and CDs. The interesting with this is I class those things as very different. I don't class that as music. I class, especially CDs, I class that as merchandise. And so a really interesting thing happened to me a couple of weeks back where a friend of mine texted me and he said, what's your address? I want to send you something. So I was like, oh, that's nice of him. The next day, postman came and a parcel came. I opened it up and it was a CD. And a little note from my friend, and it said, I saw this and I thought of you. And it was a band called Blackberry Smoke. And I opened it up. I was walking from the front door to my desk and I was thinking, what an amazing thing that Rob did. He saw this, he thought of me, he's bought it and he sent it to me. What a beautiful thing. And I was walking to my office. I took the inlay out. I was opening up. I was looking at it. I was reading it. I sat at my desk. I brought up Spotify. I typed in Blackberry Smoke and I started to listen to it on my Spotify with the CD in my hand. And since then, the CD is around here somewhere, and I've listened to the band 50 times, but not on CD because I don't even own a CD player anymore. But the monetary value is not important because the emotional value is really important. It's a moment in time. It's a friend that's bought something. It's a possession. It's a thing of beauty and a thing of art. Is it the music? No, it's not the music because I can't listen to it. I can't listen to the music because I haven't got a CD player. But it just goes to show that the CDs and I do listen to vinyl, and that's a way of listening to music because of the typical sound of it. But you can see why people are buying these things. They're the same as going to a gig and buying a tour t-shirt because it's a moment in time to remember where we are. And we live in a time now where we've constantly got these timestamps of our life. This is where I was at that moment. This is where I was at that moment. It's the same thing with Instagram. It's the same thing with Facebook, and it's the same thing with the possessions that we buy. They timestamp. It's a moment in time for us, and I think music can now start to fall into that if it's done as a manufactured product.
You've hit the nail on the head with regards to that emotional purchase. I know that, my wife and I, with a friend of ours, Steve, we went to see Grand Funk Railroad a few years ago, a band that both he and I grew up on listening to as teenagers. And, we get to see him in concert at the end of the night. What do? Steve and I, and we're dragging my wife along, and we go over to the merchandise table, and, we're buying the T-shirts, and we're buying the hats, and we're buying the posters. And we own every single CD. But we're listening to them online. The CDs, or I should say the vinyl records we grew up on, when you look back in retrospect, that was a marketing tool. And that's really kind of what you just described with Blackberry Smoke. That CD in your hand doesn't become a piece of hardware to listen to music. It becomes a piece of paraphernalia described as a marketing piece, And that's how you get the message across. And, I'm old school. I love to read the liner notes. I love to look at the pictures. We have things now like we have iDiddy cards that simply it's got a QSR code on it. And so, you can download the app and scan the code and go online and listen to all the music. And you're carrying this little card around that's maybe kind of the size of a tour laminate. And it's real cool and it's got pictures. But it's a marketing piece, and that's what we have to remember.
Yeah, and then I think this is, for me, the next bit is once we've done that, how do we look after the audience? So we're talking about building the audience with the music, and then how do we look after them? And the word I hear all of the time is noise. Everyone's doing it. How do you cut through the noise? And I think firstly, let's not make any bones about it. I got signed in the 90s. It was no picnic. We got signed to a major label. I assumed I was going to be the next U2. We got dropped. It was tough then, and the hard thing was how I was going to get an A&R man to listen to my stuff and actually come to a gig and sign us. It was it was just a different problem to have. Whereas nowadays, it's more a case of it's easy to get it out there, but how do you get it listened to with everyone out there? But I think if you look at the next thing with your audience, it's yes, you're going to bring value with the content you're going to put out. Instead of expecting them to do things for you, you're expecting to do things for them with the music and the content and thanking them and giving them value. But the big thing for me then is what happens next. And what happens next should be when someone strikes up a conversation because they add a comment or a message or something into your social media. It's how you react. And so if I'm a musician, I'm doing a gig and I play the gig, and at the end of it, I do the thing, I walk off the stage and someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, that was amazing, dude. That was really, really cool." If I just look at them and I put my thumb in their face and I just walk off, they're going to think, "What, an idiot." But we do that on social media all the time. Someone will literally say, "Oh, dude, this is amazing. I love it." And we'll just like their comment. And it's lazy. And there's an opportunity to be able to interact and build a relationship. And I think the one thing that people overlook is if you are in the biggest band in the world, if you're in the Foo Fighters or Muse or a massive band, you can't deal with the one-to-one because you've got too many people that you're dealing with every single day. But when you are in a band that's up and coming and you've got 1,000 people who are attached to your Facebook or attached to your Instagram, you can create that legacy and look after people on a one-to-one basis every single day. And that is huge.
That is huge, and that's how we need to look at it. We're going to take another break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your book that you just launched. We found out, became #1 bestseller in marketing on Amazon. The book is called The Rule Breaker's Guide to Social Media. Damian's the author on that. So we're going to talk about that a little more when we come back. In the studio with us over the phone is Damian Keyes, the founder and director of DK Music Management in the United Kingdom, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Dirk K, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music. Next up, the Indie Artist Spotlight, brought to you by Reverb Nation.
Hi y'all, my name is Brendan Young, and I am a proud member of Reverb Nation.
She's the feeling of a lazy summer evening. When you think of love, well, she's the meaning, she's the magic of the moon and stars.
I am originally from Aniana, Alabama, and currently live in Muscle Shoals, Alabama.
She's the simple life like the days of old. She's the feeling stirring deep inside my soul when I strum the soul guitar.
Growing up, my musical influences as far as genres go were things like folk and bluegrass and old Southern gospel hymns. As far as artists go, people like George Strait and Josh Turner are great influences on my style and the way that I sing and the way that I write.
Her kind of love is the kind you'll never forget. She's the kind of woman that you pray one day you'll find. Oh, you pray one day you'll find.
Over the past few years, I've greatly enjoyed all the opportunities that I've gotten to play at smaller venues, such as restaurant venues, all over the state of Alabama and even in some neighboring states, and playing some small festivals here and there. But then this past summer, I got the opportunity to go to Branson, Missouri, and be a featured performer in a show that was a country rock show on the Showboat Branson Bell. So that was an incredible opportunity, and I had a lot of fun with that. Here recently, my band and I got to open for James LeBlanc, who is a legendary singer-songwriter from right here in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. And then the next day, we turned right around and went and played a car show down in my old hometown of Aniana, Alabama.
That all of this started with hello.
I'm currently working on a CD project here in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. And I would love to share with you my brand new studio release of one of my original songs called Without You.
When I'm missing home, when I'm feeling all alone, when I'm wanting to be holding you, your memory gets me through. I could never love another more. You're everything that I've been searching for. I could go my whole life and never find a love so true. Every time I think about you, my heart skips a beat, and I get to wishing that you were lying here with me. I wanna roll over and kiss you until the morning light. Don't think I'll last the night lying here without you. Every night I go to bed hoping that I dream of you, and every day I fall again, and our love is made brand new. I can't stand being so far away, so far apart. My love, you have my future, my everything, my heart. Every time I think about you, my heart skips a beat, and I get to wishing that you were lying here with me. I wanna roll over and kiss you until the morning light. Don't think I'll last the night lying here without you. Every time I think about you, my heart skips a beat, and I get to wishing that you were lying here with me. I wanna roll over and kiss you until the morning light. Don't think I'll last the night. Every time I think about you, my heart skips a beat, and I get to wishing that you were lying here with me. I wanna roll over and kiss until the morning light. Don't think I'll last the night lying here without you. Oh, lying here without you.
Once again, my name is Brendan Young, and I'm a proud member of Reverb Nation.
You're listening to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender. Today on the show, we have from the United Kingdom, Damian Keyes, founder-director of DK Music Management, the United Kingdom's largest commercial band management company, and Warby Entertainment, the largest commercial entertainment agency in the UK. So, Damian, we're talking about social media. We're talking about interacting with the fans, which that is really kind of one of my personal pet peeves. Yes, I agree. When you're the Foo Fighters or you're Metallica or whoever that large super group or super artist is, megastar, they can't interact. But as an up and coming act, you're so right. When you see something on Facebook, and I'm guilty of it, you click the like button, the thumbs up. There are times I wish there was a thumbs down button, but I think we've got, and I said this yesterday in our meeting, that you have to become more intimate with your fan base, and you have to be able to interact more one-on-one. Put the phone down, in fact, turn the phone upside down or turn it off, push it off to the side, and spend some quality eye time, some face time with the person you're talking to build a relationship. That relationship may last, in a physical sense, 2 minutes, but you just said something in the last segment. It's a lasting memory for that fan. That fan's going to go home and go, you know what? Damian Keyes just spent 2 minutes with me out of what I know is his really busy schedule and made me feel like I was welcome and I was wanted, and I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
Yeah, and they'll go away and they'll tell everybody, and I think that's the one thing we've got is when we're building something, we have time. When we started the music college, the only thing they had just £2.5 million worth of money injected into their to the gear and the college, and all we had at the time was a table. But we had time to be able to sit down with people and work with them, and I think that is the most valuable thing. And it doesn't always have to be one-to-one. I think a lot of the times people are thinking, how do I do that on a one-to-one basis? Well, you do it in the comments section, you do it in the DMs. But the other thing you can do if it starts getting busier is you've got all of these facilities like Facebook Live or Instagram Live to be able to say, every week I'm going to do 20 minutes. If you need me, I'm there. I'm going to talk to you, and people can actually put questions on. They can say hello, and I'm going to be there for you. And I think that's the key that people need to realize with this value is the value is in the audience. The value is not the audience to the band. If the band can think of it as how can I provide value to my audience at all times, then the audience will be with you for a very long time. They'll tell everyone about it, and that's the way that you really start to build your audience. And I think every day I'll get 50 to 70 musicians or bands asking me about, questions about music and asking about distribution and asking about social media. And the first thing I do is I say, send me your links, I'm going to go and check it out. And the very first thing I say is, well, you're not valuing your audience. What you're doing is you're valuing yourself, and you're saying, this is me, and your audience is saying, well, what about us? And if you can flip that around and say, I'm so appreciative that people have come here to actually watch what I do, then I'm going to appreciate them. At that point, you flipped it around, and that's when things will grow fast.
Let's talk a little bit about your book that you released this year, The Rule Breaker's Guide to Social Media. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So that actually came around. I mean, I failed high school twice in a row. So whereas most people have that story of they failed high school and they had to go and figure something out. Well, I failed high school, and then my mum made me resit the entire year. So at that point I had to go back. While all my friends went off to college, I had to resit the entire year to do the exams all over again, and I failed them even more spectacularly. So my mum thought I was going to be a lawyer. I obviously wasn't. And so what I thought was amazing is I'm not a big reader. In fact, I think the last book I read was probably Fantastic Mr. Fox. So when it came to this book idea, a publishing company approached me. And again, another example of why you need to be doing the social media thing, because I was just going about my day and I got an email from a publishing company saying, "We like your stuff. Do you want to write a book?" And instantly I was thinking, no, like that sounds awful. And they said, "Oh, there's money in it." So I said, "Oh, in that case, yeah." So I went for this meeting and I was talking about writing a book, and I just, the concept that always kept cropping up is, why are we doing all these things that don't need to be done? Why have we got all of these rules in place that we think are there because they're rules, and they're not rules, they're traditions. They're things that we can now break because we are living in a creative age. So an example of that in the music industry, which I think is hilarious, is if I say, when I do these talks, if I say to people, how many songs are on an album? Pretty much everyone in the room says 12. It's that's the amount of songs that's on an album. And I say, great. Now the reason for that is because when vinyl came out, it was 22 minutes each side. And so roughly 3 minutes a song, again, a tradition, that fits about 12 songs onto a vinyl. And people say, oh, that makes complete sense. I say, yeah, but then CDs came along and it was 73 or 74 minutes on a CD. So you get an extra 30 minutes worth of music. You've got all of that creative time to write more songs. And bands said, oh, that's amazing. And they said, how many songs should we put on an album? 12. And then CDs went away, and now music is like anything. It's on a phone. So we can do anything we want. There's no manufacturing costs or production things that need to happen. So we can do anything we want. You go on Spotify and you figure out how many bands are doing 12 songs on an album, because that's the done thing. And yes, it's partly because people expect it, but it's a tradition. It doesn't mean it's a rule. It's just, it used to be a rule. It had to be, because you couldn't fit any more songs on unless you wrote 2-minute songs. But now we can do anything, but we choose to stick with the tradition. And the whole book was about social media, and technology has come along and smashed so many of these rules out. And it is now up to us. We can do anything we want, including write a book, even though we failed at high school, which I would never have been able to have done 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because I've got the audience, so I just sell the book to my own audience. So I could never have done that. I would have had to go to a publishing company and wrote the book myself and get it into shops. And now it's brilliant. I can just do anything I want, and it's up to my creativity. And so the book is about social media and my journey, because 2 years ago I didn't know anything about social media. I didn't care for it. I was a musician. I was touring a lot. And this is brilliant. The only social media platform I had 2 years ago was Snapchat. And the reason why I had Snapchat, I didn't have Facebook or anything else, but the reason why I had Snapchat is because whilst I was on tour with my band, I used to take pictures of my band members, and then I used to draw a dick on their head, and then I used to send it back to them, because I thought that was the funniest thing that ever, and that was my version of social media. And so then I realized that I was going to become this dinosaur who didn't understand social media. So I kind of dove into it, fell in love with it, and realized that the rules of marketing, branding, and advertising haven't changed in any way since I started. But the vehicle of how we do these things, that's changed, and the consumption has changed. And that's the bit I needed to get my head around. And now I feel like that's the bit I want to help people with, is we understand advertising, but we aren't understanding today's consumption. And if we can get our head around that bit, we win.
Therefore, the Rule Breaker's Guide to Social Media. I've said this many times. You hear the old adage, think outside the box. And I tell my clients, forget about the box, throw it away, because there is no box anymore.
Absolutely.
We're not working, there are no boundaries, at least from a technological standpoint. It really is trying, and you said it earlier, there's so much white noise out there that you have to really sift your way through, you have to wade through. There's thousands upon thousands of bands and artists all saying the same thing. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. You have to engage yourself with the audience, because it is a competition. It's very competitive out there. you have to be able to at least get your foot in the door long enough to capture their attention, and you have to be creative to do that.
Absolutely. And what you said there sums it up entirely, which is people used to think that thinking outside the box was the thing to do, not realizing that there isn't a box, which is hilarious. You know, there used to be a box, but now there isn't a box. So that to me sums it up completely.
Damian, thank you so much for being on the show. How can people find you?
This has been brilliant. Thank you so much for having me. So basically, my name, bit odd, Damian Keyes, Damian Keyes. If you put that into any social media, it comes through to me, and I have all of my notifications still on my phone, believe it or not. So my phone lights up like a Christmas tree every 3 or 4 seconds with messages and likes and stuff. So you put that into social media, you send me a message saying hello, and you'll probably get one right back.
Very good. Damian, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been brilliant.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Traci Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Ribas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.